So I would officially like to call this meeting of the Blackstone Millville Regional School District School Committee to order. This is another workshop to look at the budget for fiscal year 21-22. And let's do introductions. I am Jane Reggio from Millville, and I'm just going to go, it won't be in any kind of order, but Jill.
Jill Piligallerani, Director of Learner Support Services.
Carrie.
Carrie Gaudette, Blackstone.
Tara.
Tara Larkin, Millville.
Jason.
Jason DeFalco, Superintendent.
Dan.
Hi, Dan Saltzman, Technology Consultant for the district.
Jack.
Keith, Blackstone.
Sarah.
Sarah Williams, Blackstone.
And Matt.
Matt Aaronworth, Assistant Superintendent.
All right, well, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. And I'm going to officially turn this over to Jason, who will walk us through this week's budget review and requests.
Excellent. Thanks, Ms. Reggio. Good evening, everybody. Good to see all of you tonight. This evening, we have two very important presentations, and then afterwards, we'll talk a little bit about the overall curriculum and instruction framework for next year, because as we know, a lot of the teaching and learning work actually lives right within the principal budgets regarding materials, resources, positions. So happy to, kind of re-loop back to those and have a little bit further of a discussion should the committee have any additional questions on those materials. But this evening, the two main cost centers that we're going to be hearing about are from Jill, who is going to review with us in great detail our special education and English language learner budget, and Dan, who's going to talk to us about our IT needs for fiscal 22. And so I'm going to share my screen so we can pull the documents up. And to our committee members, Friday afternoon, I have scanned in and sent the materials over to you for the workshop. So you should have those handy. If you need them again, I'm happy to re-forward those. So they're at the top of your inbox. Just let me know, and I'm happy to take care of that for you. But with that, let me share my screen so we can pull up the documents in front of everybody. Just give me 1 minute here. This is the correct one. It is. Okay, perfect. So Jill, with that, I'm going to turn this over to you. And if you want to just point me in the right direction, I will scroll up, down, and do whatever you need me to do here.
Perfect. Thank you. Hi, everyone. So I'm going to start off. I tried to be a little bit more detailed this year, just to kind of give you an idea of where we are and where we're headed. So the first page of this slide, and I think it just may be a tiny bit off, but the whole first page is talking about the numbers of students. So I kind of wanted to give you an idea. Overall, we have approximately 313 students in special education on IEPs in the district. And I will tell you that number fluctuates daily. If I told you the number tomorrow, it could give or take a few more because it's an ongoing process. The number is similar, and we usually hover around about 17%, which is, a good number to have. We're not over or under. And I wanted to give you just that sense of per grade and also per building. So if you look, I'm not going to go through all the numbers, but you can take a look at and I'll talk a little bit more about our preschool at 31, and we have services only. And just to explain that, we have some students who don't require a full preschool program for readiness, but they may need some services to help support them in OT, PT, speech. So that's what the services only means. In kindergarten this year, you'll notice we have approximately 19 students on IEPs, and this year we have some services only case students. You'll know that kindergarten is a requirement, but we did have some families that chose to just take advantage of the services on the IEP. So that could be the OT, the PT, the speech and language. Then from there, I kind of separated a little bit out the grade levels. You'll notice a grade 1, we have 16, and how the breakdown is in each building. Grade 2, grade 3, grade 4, and grade 5. So those numbers are a little bit similar. You'll notice sometimes we have a larger group per grade, but they're pretty much, similar to last year. I also was able to break down the middle school for you in 6th, 7th, and 8th. as well as our BMR High School. And you'll notice that it says 12 plus. So that also includes our students who are currently participating in our 18 to 22-year-old programs, those students who remain with us more than 4 years for those transition services. It also notes that our out of district, so I hope I have some wood nearby, but I wanted to report that our out of district students, I think we've gone over the last few years from 25, 26. We are pretty much leveling off and stable. Right now we're at 21, 20. We have one student who is actually doing a remote, but still will be considered an out of district last year. And I do think that's
great, Jill. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah. We've had an opportunity, remember, that now that doesn't mean to say we've had students who have moved into this district that without the specialized programs we've begun to, we're building up, we would have had to look at out of district. So it's really nice to see that our programs are really starting to come into their own. They've been in place for a couple of years now. The teachers we have in the program, are fantastic. So I'm very happy to say that we've kind of are leveling off a little bit, and we're catching our kids at a younger age, because if they're going out of district younger, it's very hard to bring them back. But the majority of our students in out of district right now, just so you know, are at the secondary level. So we're very proud to say that our programs, we're able to maintain our students in district, and we're also able to, when we have students who will come into our district who have more significant needs, we're able to transition them into some of our current specialized programs. So it's been really nice to see. And like I said, I'm knocking on as much as I can right now, because I hope I didn't say it, there will be any changes. So again, those are just our general numbers. I don't know if anyone has any questions about that, but again, we're hovering we're just about under the state average for our special education population. If we go on to the next page under existing materials, to the left this year, I just noted regular education programs. Didn't list them all, but just so you're aware, our special education teachers also have access to all the regular ed programs and supplemental supports and resources that are available. Our literacy program has been great. Our special ed teachers, along with the regular ed teachers, were trained in there, and they're still using our current math programs, as well as some of the other programs like our IXL, or any of the type of supplemental. All of our special ed teachers have access to that. In addition to that, I know one of the big things we've been doing over the last few years is looking at our specialized programs to make sure that we're actually using programs across the district, across the grades, so it's consistent. So what I did this year, these programs really aren't new. There's things we've talked about before, but I'm not going to go through them, but I gave you a little description of each of the programs, so you kind of get a sense of the different types of skills that we're addressing with our students and the options that are available. A lot of our programs can be used for a wide variety of special education students, and you'll note by some of the descriptions, some of them are for our students who have more substantial needs. So again, you can go through those. We do have the Wilson, the Foundations, which has always been in the district. We actually added on last year our Just Words. We have the Wilson Reading Intervention. Remember, we trained, again, I appreciate that the committee supported us, training 10 staff members. The other thing I'm really excited about, when we were able to train our 10 staff members, we were also able to kind of prepay for the next round of our teachers getting an additional certification. I had a lengthy conversation with our Wilson representatives, and there is a next step before probably a level 2, but it's to give teachers more training and working with smaller groups of students in Wilson. Our goal was to hopefully start it this year. We weren't able to just because of all that was going on. We want to make sure that the training is done with fidelity, but we still have that on the, on the horizon, hopefully implement that next year for all of our teachers who got that level 1 certification. So we are excited about that, and that's already paid for, so it's not in my budget. So again, you can go through and you can see our Ascend Math, our Read Live, our Step Up to Writing. We talked a little bit about this last year, and actually, I talked about the grant, one of the grants that we have this year, which I'm hoping is going to be able to fund this Step Up to Writing. I do have a little description in there. We did some trials with it last year. So again, no new money, hoping to fund it this year with one of our grants. What you will, and again, if you go through, I see Edmark, ACE, and Unique Learning System. What you will see on the side, and I think, Jason, you need to go up to the top for the existing materials again. It says new materials and rationale. So one of the things that I think we're missing at this point is we want to make sure that our teachers have resources, materials, a program when it comes to executive functioning. We have a lot of students in special education who they may have some of the academic skills, but because they haven't developed those executive functioning skills, their ability to organize, prioritize, self-monitor, bring up information in their working memory, they're not able to access those academic areas or be successful in those academic areas. So one of the things that was brought up by secondaries, we have some resources. It's kind of like we're pulling things here and there, but to be able to look at a program that would actually consistently, in step by step, be able to address these kinds of skills. So we've already reached out to this, it's called SMARTS. And they actually are a Massachusetts-based program and company. So we're waiting to hear back from them to see if we can get a trial going to see if it's something that would benefit our students. So if this is something that we can implement, and it is available, I believe it starts in the upper elementary grades all the way up through high school. It would potentially be a new way to newly fund this. And it all depends what we get for that grant. It could be a little bit funded from that one too. But this is something that we're missing right now, that we want to make sure our kids have those skills to be able to access the academics. So that's our new materials rationale. All right, so yep, we can stop right at staffing. So yep, you can actually, if you can scroll, can you see that front? I think it's a little high. If you can go down a little bit, Jason, keep going. Yep, okay. So our current staff. So if you look here, it starts talking about our elementary special education teachers, and it actually should say and secondary, but it lists them all. So at the complex, we currently have 5 special education teachers who are servicing our students, grades 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And we currently have an essentials program at the complex. And I'm just going to mention the names because what I also did for you is I made sure that if you look below this, I gave you a little description of each program. I'm just going to get into the numbers when we go down so you can see what we're looking for new staff as well next year. So at the complex, we currently have 5 plus the essentials program. In Millville, we currently have 2 special education teachers, plus we have 2 preschool teachers, which are integrated, 1 substantially separate preschool program, 1 specialized program, which is our pragmatic learning classroom, and 1 which is our alternative program. At the middle school, we have 3 special education teachers and 1 specialized classroom, which is our essentials at the middle school. And at the high school, we have 3 special education teachers. And in addition to that, 3 specialized programs. We have an essentials program, an alternative learning program, and also our community connections program. And if you look below that, I tried to give you some descriptions of each of the programs. Our elementary alternative program right now is a grade 2 through 4 program, and it services 5 students with significant needs. It's more of a therapeutic classroom. Our elementary essentials program, which is at the complex right now, that can service students 3 through 5. Right now, the majority of our students are 5th graders. We have 5 students participating. Our pragmatics learning classroom, our PLC, it's for our students who have some significant needs, maybe on the spectrum. We currently have 3 students in that classroom, and it is very low student-teacher ratio. Our middle school essentials program, we currently have 6 students who are participating in that program. And at our high school, the combination of our community connections and high school essentials, we have 11 students total who are participating in those programs. And 4 of those students are in our 18 to 22-year-olds post-high school program. And then our alternative program at the high school, the numbers fluctuate. It could be 5 all the way up to 8. It depends on the student's needs at that time. So that's what we currently have in place. The first ask is for an additional early elementary essentials teacher. We currently have students right now who are going to be transitioning out of preschool who are going to need a substantially separate specialized program. They're too young to be able to participate in our current 2 through 4 because the kids will be going older and we only have 48 months for students to be in the same program. But to be very honest, kids coming out of preschool going into that kindergarten grade 1 range really would need something separate. We're looking at 4+ students for this program. And again, these are our students who are coming out of preschool, who are coming from a substantially separate program. So it would be the next transition for them. And again, I put a little description under there of what the program would look like. The next ask under this is preschool. I know Christina talked a little bit about this, but I just want to give you an idea for numbers. So last year for referrals to EI through our, it's like an early intervention program, we had 31 students who were, who came through the EI process, and approximately 50% of those students qualified for special education. This year, just in January, we already have 28 referrals. So it's definitely a significant increase in referrals. I don't have the percentage of students who are qualifying yet, but I can tell you we have quite a few students who are qualifying for EI this year. And we're finding that the students who are coming in and are qualifying, their needs are much greater. I do have an opportunity to meet with my special ed directors group on a regular basis. And I think everyone across the valley is seeing those EI numbers increase. And I'm sure part of it is, remember, our little ones, before turning age 3, the time for development, there can be a quick development with interventions. And since the school closure from last March, a lot of our students haven't gotten the EI intervention. So we're seeing kids who haven't made the kind of progress we normally like to see when they come to school. So those numbers are definitely increasing. With that said, we are looking to expand our preschool program for a couple of different reasons. One, based on our need, our special education population is increasing in our preschool and our EI, and also because of interest. I know Christina had mentioned that our application went out for preschool, and one of the questions on there was also, would you be interested in a full day? So we're trying to get that information back from parents. So currently we have 3 full-time preschool teachers. 2 of them they each have 2 sessions. So that means that we have 4 sessions, 2 a.m. and 2 p.m. of integrated. And then we have an a.m. and a p.m. session of sub-separate. So those are students who, definitely need to be outside the integrated classroom to get more specialized interventions. What we're proposing is next year to add an additional preschool teacher to be able to bring in some students as role models for tuition, and also be able to make sure that we have enough classrooms for our students with special needs. It's important to note that there is a requirement when it comes to preschool of the numbers of students that you can have in an integrated classroom. It's 20 students with 1 teacher and a paraprofessional with no more than 5 students on IEPs, or if you have up to 7 students on IEPs, with not to exceed 15 full students with a teacher and a paraprofessional, and our sub-separate classrooms cannot exceed 9 with 2 adults in the room. So again, where we have such a giant influx of students coming in for EI, we really need to prepare and have classrooms available for them. So you'll notice on the right-hand side where it says 4 preschool teachers, it mentions 5 or 6 integrated sessions or 2 to 3 sub-separate sessions. It's all going to depend on our population. But we would definitely be able to increase the number of students we take in and the number of services we need to service, students we need to service through IEPs. The other ask, and I feel like I'm asking a lot this year, is that if we're looking to expand our preschool program, we need to make sure we have the staff to be able to run the team meetings, do the outreach. So we currently have, on the left, notice we have 1 team chair who does pre-K through 3. We have 1 team chair who does 4 and 5. I'm sorry, a half who does 4 and 5, a half who does 6 and 7, and 1 who does 8 through 12. What we're proposing for next year is to increase by a half early learning PK coordinator / team chairperson. So going through our preschool, we're looking at a 1 full-time person to do the pre-K through 2. Again, that will be our early childhood model. That preschool coordinator will also be able to assist with continued outreach, with, having the EI meetings prior to the team meetings to be able to get all that information and data. We'll be able to follow up with families as well as the EI, be able to make sure we're meeting our timelines because, for EI, We do have to make sure that we have an IEP in place for students as they turn 3 years old. So our timelines are a little bit different. And again, our preschool needs are definitely increasing. And also what it will do is by having someone dedicated to doing the preschool coordination, it's going to reduce the amount of time we need to take our preschool teachers out of the classroom. Because right now they're doing a lot of participation in meetings, the EI outreach, and as well as the assessments, what they'll continue to do. But we really do need, if we're going to expand our preschool and make sure we meet all the needs and the timelines and remain in compliance, we do need some more time for someone to dedicate their time to the preschool. And then I'll just go through, we're looking at possibility of the 3 through 6 team chair, a half-time 7 and 8, and then the same thing at the high school 9 through 12. And what we're hoping is that our team chair at the high school will be able to pick up some of our out-of-district responsibilities for our students who are older. The next one, go down a little bit more, Jason. Yep. Our supplemental service providers, this is what we currently have in district. You can see on the left, just kind of lists the number of our speech and language pathologists, speech language assistants, and all the way down. One of the things I want to point out is we have some contracted services in district. If you look at the bottom of that on the left-hand side, it'll talk about vision specialists. So we have some students with some vision needs and currently it's contracted services. We have a teacher of the deaf who is contracted services. We have orientation mobility specialists, which is contracted. And we have an educational audiologist, which also is contracted services because our numbers are so low right now. Last year, and I want to focus a little bit on the teacher of the deaf. We did recently have to post for a teacher of the deaf. We had last year our entire, the amount spent for our teacher of the deaf through consultation was just under $3,000. We had 3 students who had some needs. This year, we currently have, within the next month, we will have approximately 9 students with hearing impairments ranging from mild to severe. We have some preschool students coming in. Currently, right now, it's been, I'd say about $6,000 that we've spent for the teacher of the deaf at $132 per hour. And just so you're aware, when we do contracted services, when they do come to district, we're also charged for mileage. We're currently contracting with the Learning Center for the Deaf. We are asking, again, we had to put it in this year for a teacher of the deaf. We have some students coming into preschool who are going to need more than a couple of times a week. And I just want to give you an idea. I ran some numbers that if we had to bring in contracted services, and if it was just 4 hours a day at $132 an hour, it comes out to approximately a little over $90,000 for contracted service for the teacher of the deaf. If it was a full day, at 6 hours, you'd be looking at over $140,000 of contracted services. So definitely something we're looking at. I can tell you it's probably going to be very difficult to look at hiring a teacher of the deaf. They're very far and few between, but what we're seeing in our district, I'm not sure why, we're seeing a pretty huge influx of students who are requiring who have hearing impairments and are requiring not only the teacher of the deaf, but consultation from audiologists. So just wanted to provide you with that information as well. At the bottom section, it talks about our paraprofessional staff, which hasn't changed significantly. I will tell you that we are still looking to fill some of our openings for paraprofessional staff. We've had some staff who have moved on, who have retired or resigned. So we do still have some openings in the building. So if anyone sees the video, our jobs are posted on School Spring, and indeed we are still looking for some paraprofessional staff. But you'll notice the paraprofessional staff is very similar as last year. But if we are going to be adding a preschool program, we would also need to add another ABA paraprofessional, to that program. The requirement is a teacher and an additional person in the classroom to maintain that. Out of district, I did talk a little bit of, we have 20 plus students because again, it is 21, but we have one of our students who is currently fully remote and just has offered services from the district for the OT, PT. We still have 7 programs, including collaborative, public day, private day, and residential. And as I mentioned to date, we do not have any new out of district placements. To the right, we always do need to add, there's always an increase in our out-of-district cost, anywhere between 2 and 3%. And again, as I mentioned, we do continue to review and build our capacity to make sure we're able to meet our students' needs within district. Before I go on to the English language learners, any questions on special education? Okay. So our English language learners, I will say that our access testing, we did have a lot of students last year who went from our Ls. When they're tested in access based on their score, they could be a FEL, which is a form of English limited proficient student. And then we have our opt-out column. So if you look overall, we currently have 24 students who are identified as English language learners, 47 who are formally English language learners, and we have 1 student who is opting out. So every year, parents of students of English language learners, they do have the right to opt their students out, their children out of EL services, just so you know that they are tested every year with our assessment, which is the access. We currently have 1.8 L teachers, and you're probably thinking, well, is that a lot of students? You only have 24. But what we're seeing is the needs of our students, the numbers of our students who are identified as Ls are going down, but their needs of our students are increasing. We've gone from having, we've had some students with our Spanish, our Arabic, our Portuguese. Right now we have an increase in students who are Chinese speaking primarily. So what we're finding is our students may be 24, but their language levels are presenting as having much more needs. So lower number, but more needs. We're continuing to use our National Geographic program that was purchased a few years back. And the great thing is our Wonders program at the elementary school has a really nice component for our English ELL teachers to use with our students, which is great. There are some times that we're able to, we do have to supplement. What was great is we found out our Ascend program actually had a Spanish version, so we're able to actually use that to help support a student at our high school. And I think that is it. Any questions?
Thank you, Jill. So I actually have a question.
Sure.
It's just a reflective. I know that when you stepped into this role, we changed the face of the role, and we had originally had an assistant, and we turned the assistant into a coach, I believe, or kind of did a shift and adjust. And I think I'm just looking for a general, from your perspective, the changes that we've made to special education in terms of administrative roles, is it working?
So I think that in our district, all of our central office team has many hats. I think I do as well. I think it's working, but in any district, of course, any help is welcome. I think I've had the opportunity to learn more about other areas that I'm now responsible for, the Title I, the L. I do think in special education, with the requirements of paperwork, some additional support with that. I think having the coach has been great. But again, I think we have, we do have a kind of a tiny central office team, but I think we work well together. I think it's working. That's not to say, of course, any support is a welcome support, but I think we've, made a lot of gains in special education and in all areas, and we're making it work.
Thank you. Anyone else have questions?
Yeah, Jill, I have a question about the preschool.
Yep.
Would the increase in students, and I think I saw an increase in tuition, would that offset the cost of adding staff at all?
It doesn't always, it's not an equal offset. It isn't, but there is some, monies that we do get back, but it isn't equal, it isn't. But what it does do, it provides us the opportunity to make sure we're in compliance with the regulations for our integrated programs.
Okay, thank you.
Sarah, to that exact question, Matt, when you put that position in the budget, in the zero-based budget, can you didn't put it in at the full amount, you put it at a reduced amount. It wasn't a significant reduction, I don't recall it being, but to account for some of the tuition, right?
I have to double check the number that was used.
Yeah, I don't think it was the usual number. I think it was but it wasn't a huge decrease.
No, we're anticipating, I believe I might have increased the revenue from the preschool account.
Maybe that's
But the increase in revenue does not entirely offset the cost of the teacher. It's not.
Yeah, I'm glad you clarified that, Matt. Thank you. I think you're right. I think you left the position in at a regular teacher position, but I think you increased the tuition to offset it. If I remember.
I'll double check that and and confirm that for further conversation.
Thanks. That's a great question, Sarah. I'm glad you asked that.
And the other thing I just wanted to mention that Sarah brought up preschool is last year we had quite a few parents who signed up for preschool. And then when, the COVID, all of the restrictions in place, we did have 20 parents who opted to keep their children home, which some were in special ed, some were in regular ed. We still had a wait list though. When school started, because of the numbers, we wanted to keep it, small. But I do want to say that, our preschool teachers are doing a fabulous job this year. And we actually did offer not only the in-person integrated, substantially separate, but we do have a session of remote preschool. And our kids are participating, our teachers doing a fabulous job. So again, we've also been able to be very flexible at providing, all of our students in preschool, regular ed and special ed, varied opportunities so they, are able to still, participate, in our program.
Yeah, and I know one of the pieces, Jill, to that point that we're looking at with the pre-K program, and it's been we'll say informal goal because it hasn't been one we've put forward, through a formal goal selection or approval process, but has been looking at ways to expand our pre-K programming. We know the earlier we get the kids in, the better. And so we were talking about looking at the possibility of having even a full day, full week program and looking to see what would be feasible, the interest that would be there. And our teachers are excited about that, our existing PK teachers, to be able to offer that. So we're excited as we continue to think about how to expand programming. And when we think about essentially that early learning center that Millville Elementary will be, there is an awesome opportunity there. To really, capitalize on that PK to grade 2 and really dig deep into the early literacy and numeracy work.
Right.
So,
and on what Jason was saying, it's not just, letting our preschool teachers fend for themselves, it's bringing in programming. Do you know what I mean? Making sure the students are really focusing on that academic, readiness piece, to move on. So they are prepared when they, head off to kindergarten.
It's been nice too that kindergarten teachers have been able to zip down the hall and talk to the PK teachers of our kids that were there. I know you've heard that before, but it's really cool that they can just literally go around the corner and have a conversation with the teacher that had the student in PK and be able to talk through some of the work with that. So good stuff.
Just for the record, the revenue for the PK was increased from 85,000 to 100,000. So it was an additional 15,000 in revenue, which is very conservative, I hope. But as I mentioned, that wouldn't offset the cost of the teacher.
No. Any other questions? Again, I don't see everyone, so if you do have a question, you kind of have to jump in. Okay.
All right. So thanks, Jill. So we can shift gears and talk a little bit about our information technology, and Dan's going to talk us through his budget proposal for FY22. Dan, thanks for being here.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for letting me present the budget tonight. I appreciate it. I know that you've seen many of the items on this budget already in the workshops that you've held with the principals. Portions of the tech budget are parallel to those that you've already seen. So I'm not going to go into great detail about that those items. I'll go through the budget sort of category by category to help you understand the big picture. The left side of what you're looking at represents the existing expenses. The right side is what we're adding. And I'll go into some of those bigger ticket items there. And please feel free to interrupt with any questions as I'm going through this. So you can see the first category is instructional platforms, and that's really where we have any additions are going to be in this category. Some of the bigger ones, we've got Nearpod school license. We're adding that next year. That makes essentially makes assignments more interactive. You can take like pre-recorded videos that have pre-existing videos that somebody might have already had, and you can add questions to them in the middle of it. It makes students can present their work collaboratively, and it facilitates creation of formative assessments and does all sorts of great stuff. We've got the virtual high school there. You can see at the bottom. We're adding seats there. We have, I think, so the middle school is not presently using it in the 7th grade, and they're going to be adding that. The high school is just adding some additional seats. And if you're not familiar with virtual high school, it's like over 200 online courses, provides teacher training on how to instruction on using those courses. It basically allows for a larger variety of courses that otherwise we wouldn't be teaching. So that's about it for the bigger ones there in the instructional platforms. Moving on, Jason, if you want to scroll down to the information, student information and management. Again, we're not adding anything here. We've got our school information system costs, our website, our GoGuardian site license, which helps filter our devices. We've got our guidance platform there. No changes there. Then going on to the hardware, that includes our basically our Chromebook costs. You can see our leases. I'm going to get more into that at the end. I'm going to go through our Chromebook replacement cycle policy. That's going to be something new. And you can see we've got some server costs there. But again, I'm going to go back to the Chromebook part of that at the end.
Dan, if you don't mind, I just want to cut in for 1 second. I want to be very clear for the school committee and anyone watching the recording. All of these instructional platforms, they are not duplicates of what the principals put into their budgets. This is just a summary of the instructional technology and the technology supplies for the district. So these are being re-referenced. So some of these, as Dan mentioned, the principals have already spoken about. The only one that you will see that even looks replicated slightly from the existing materials to the new materials is the virtual high school. And you will see that in this version, it's clearly split out that the existing costs are around 16,000. The additional seats, that would be 10 seats for the middle school and 10 seats for the high school, they are at an additional $6,500.
So Matt, you're also saying that even though Dan has the virtual high school listed here at 6,500, and Tanya and Mike have them in their respective budgets, they're actually not in the budget twice.
Correct. None of them are in the budget twice.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Dan.
Okay. So the next category is our networking communications budget. And again, no changes here. This is just our internet and our core networking costs. Then below that, we have our administrative accounting, and there we have our financial system, Budget Sense. We have the fee for my and my company's consulting services, the copier costs and consumables. So that's the big picture of the IT budget. I want to get into the Chromebook cycle. This is something new that the district is going to be doing. Any questions though on what we've talked about so far?
So Dan, new is the 16,150, 145.
And that's just if you scroll up to the top, that's going to be the additional
Everything.
instructional
Mhm.
platforms.
Yep.
So, okay.
Questions? No? Okay, keep going, Dan.
Okay. So the Chromebook one-to-one, or the replacement cycle, let's talk about that for a second. What we're going to be moving to is we'll ultimately have a lease every year. And what we have right now, you can see these pre-existing leases. And next year, we're not going to be making any large Chromebook purchases. So this is all going to start the following year. Right now, all students in the district have a Chromebook assigned to them. We're fully one-to-one. In grades 5 through 12, they'll be bringing those Chromebooks home every night. In grades K through 4, they leave those Chromebooks in the carts at the school, but there's still assigned one Chromebook for each kid, each student. The replacement plan assumes a 4-year replacement cycle. We're going to be insuring these Chromebooks for 4 years, and they will be 4-year leases. So everything's going to be working on a 4-year cycle. Some machines are going to last longer, of course, we hope. and those will be allotted to the best of those 5-year Chromebooks will be allotted to kindergarten students and used as spares. The ones that don't last 4 years are going to be replaced by the insurance policy, which is important. Chromebooks are going to be replaced essentially 3 times in a student's academic career at the district. Students receive a new Chromebook in the 5th grade, and what's important here is that they really take ownership of these Chromebooks. It helps stop the breakage when they really feel like it's theirs. They're going to keep these Chromebooks until they advance to the high school, so they're going to have it in 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Then in 9th grade, the same thing happens. They're going to go up to the high school, they're going to get a brand new Chromebook, and we hope that they take ownership of that and take good care of it. They're going to keep that Chromebook until they graduate. New Chromebooks are also going to be placed in the carts in the 4th grade. Those, again, they don't go home at night. They go back in the cart. At the end of every year, the 4th grade Chromebooks are going to be passed down to the 3rd grade, the 3rd to the 2nd, 2nd to the 1st, et cetera. And what this does is it allows us to have a predictable way of managing and cycling through these Chromebooks. At the bottom, I just actually, I don't know if it's on. Yeah, I don't think it's on there. So
Dan, can I just cut in for 1 second?
Sure.
Thank you. Just for the committee, I want everyone to be clear. The 5th graders do not currently bring, well, actually, currently everybody brings their Chromebooks home. But pre-COVID, the 5th graders were not bringing their Chromebooks home. But what we want to do, as Dan was explaining, is get onto that 4-year retention cycle of each batch of devices,
Right.
so that we could put it onto a 4-year lease plan, so that what will happen is we're eventually going to add a 4th lease. And then each year, one lease will end and a new lease will begin.
Sure.
And then that will be our permanent cycle. But when we introduce this cycle, when we finally come back from whatever our COVID configuration is, that's when we will start sending the 5th graders home with their Chromebooks.
Okay. But somebody who is in 11th grade now,
Mhm.
they've had their Chromebook for more than, or will have their Chromebook for more than 4 years, that group.
I believe the 11th graders next year will be the 4th or 5th year.
Yeah.
They're all
Okay.
right now, they're very close. The oldest devices that we had, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, I believe was the EduGears. And those are, for the most part, phased out, and we've just been using them as spares and as filling back that void in the elementary schools to get to that 1-to-1
Mhm.
for COVID, that is.
But is there any concern that some of those students who have had the same one for 4 or 5 years won't make it to the end?
No, the
Okay.
devices that we started purchasing when I came on board,
Yeah.
this would be this is my 3rd year, so about 3 years ago.
Uh-huh.
All of those devices were insured for 4 years.
Okay.
And it wasn't the optional, a parent can pay for insurance if they choose to, and then if they paid, they get a replacement. If they didn't, they have to pay. We got rid of that, and we moved to, we buy the devices, they're insured for 4 years. We're on a 4-year cycle.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. I just to sort of end that, I just want to give you a sense of what these Chromebooks cost. A Chromebook, typically they're around $200. We're getting 4-year insurance coverage. That's about $55 per Chromebook. We have a license that we have to get for each one. That's $35. There's a setup cost of $10 per unit. Then it makes for a total, if you assume that there's about 350 Chromebooks in each cycle, it's around $100,000 each time we purchase them. And so it's about $25,000 per year that we can expect. Matt, does that sound? Yep. And so that's, and then it's a predictable thing. And every year we're doing that. Any questions on the replacement?
The caveat, jumping in, sorry, Dan, is that is based on our current financing terms. We can't predict those in the future.
And we also, I mean, we don't know what'll happen with the cost of the Chromebooks necessarily. Right now, you can get them pretty inexpensive, $200. if they go up a little bit, you know, it could be 220, but could be 210. We'll see. Okay, so that's all I have. Are there any questions overall on the budget?
Any questions for Dan? That was pretty straightforward.
Okay, thanks very much.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Mr. Reggio, would you like to go next now in terms of prioritizing?
Home? No. Yep, so if everybody remembers, we said we would, you know, be here for the long haul to kind of go back through. And we can either start with who we heard first. I am going to, I was trying to hook up my second monitor so I could have the documents, but I didn't want to lose while we were there. So I'm going to try to do that now. But if you lose me, I don't know, Tammy's in charge. Okay. Because I'll be back on. But anyway, what would you guys, do you want to start from where we started? Do you want to work backwards and talk about special ed and technology, or what are people's preference?
We also have the PowerPoint that has the big picture stuff, like with the positions and if folks want me to pull that.
You want that to be, do people want that to be shared?
I can pull that up if you wanted to see those and look at like the big ticket items and talk about how we'd fund some of those. I don't know if you want to start with positions, departments, material.
So for myself, I need a clear understanding, and again, you may lose me in a second here, I don't know, but of kind of how splitting the two, having the early elementary school and having the 3 through 5, which I realize next year will be 2 through 5, but how that impacts staffing. Because I heard, you know, Jill, we have an essentials classroom, this grade level, but now do we have to have, you know, like what is the big picture look like in the elementary school given the change? And I don't even know if that's a question that, you know, can be answered, but.
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, we definitely can start there, and we can talk about, maybe it would be helpful to talk about the implications of kind of that transition from a budgetary perspective. We can definitely look at that. So I think a couple things. When I look at the big costs, which is usually the staffing, right? Because from a teaching and learning perspective, from the curriculum end, you saw the ask, it was about 11,000 for each of the elementary schools for math. And that's it, right? I mean, we spent hundreds of thousands on ELA literacy last spring. This year, the ask is small for curriculum because we are going to do another year of math. So there's not a heavy lift there. It's 11,000 for each school for 1 year extension with Envisions. The main cost comes into staffing. So from the staffing perspective, I think when we look at what initially we put forward as an associate principal at $100,000, we will not need to fill that. Instead, we're looking at a planning, teaching, and learning coach that specializes in early childhood. So that individual or position would be at the complex. Would be at Millville Elementary. And the current coach, that position would be at the complex, coaching the upper elementary grades.
So hold 1 second. So there will be a coach at every school, essentially. You know, one at the complex for both halves or whatever you call that now. But and is there an additional one, or there's just 4? There would be 4.
So presently we have 1 across both elementary schools. We have 1 for the middle and high school, and then we have 1 special ed. So next year we would have 1 at Millville that specializes in PK to 2, 1 at the complex that specializes in upper elementary 3 to 5 or 2 to 5 next year. We would still have our shared coach between the middle and high school and special ed. So we would add 1 coach So instead of 100,000 on an associate principal, we would be somewhere between 50 and 70,000, depending upon the experience for a coach.
For the coach.
Yep. That money's in our budget now. We just never filled it.
Gotcha.
So there would be an increase there, Jane, to your question.
Yep.
Additionally, we would be looking at the, and I'm looking at slide 12 of that budget presentation, the January 14th meeting. We would be looking at the 2 STEM teachers, one for Millville Elementary and one for the complex. That would in fact be new money. Those are not existing positions that we have. And then if you look at slide 13, that's the return and recovery slide of the staffing. You will see that we are looking for 2 math interventionists, one for Millville and one for the complex. And then an increase of 0.5 reading specialists. So that is new money as well, but we are looking at our COVID funding to help actually cover those costs.
This year's COVID funding, or are you thinking there'll be some next year?
So what we are, what is coming out in the next couple of weeks is called ESSER 2, ESSER 2. So it's the second wave of COVID relief funds, essentially, that are available for us to spend up until September 2023. And so what we are going to be looking at, and the district should be able to apply for and acquire close to 600,000. It's going to be less than that, we think, but somewhere around that, that we hope will be able to cover 2 years of some of these positions. So we're still, you'll look, and if you, Matt's, I think it was Matt's revenue sheet, there were some COVID funds that were outlined there as potential revenues. So we're looking to be able to fund some of the return and recovery positions on slide 13 with those funds. Matt, do you want to speak to that specifically?
Certainly, if you give me just a minute, I just want to double check. So we have listed in the needs-based budget, we were anticipating approximately $500,000 in additional COVID funding. We also referenced that for some of the special education needs, that we would be applying additional funds from circuit breaker to offset those costs. So not to jump to a different subject. I apologize if that's what it sounds like. I'm looking at the revenue section. I'm just trying to point out a couple of those pieces.
Figure it out. Yeah.
So the new money that does not either exist in the budget, Jane, nor is there a revenue stream that would be able to absorb the cost like the COVID funds.
COVID, yep.
Would be the 2 STEM teachers, which would be the additional enrichment offerings, one at Millville, one at the complex. And of course, the special education positions that Jill was discussing.
Jason, is that money per year? Are you estimating the 500 under 600,000?
That's total.
Fully? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
And I don't have the slides in front of me. I missed Jill's presentation. Is there an interventionist for a middle school level on the recovery piece?
There is an increase in the interventionist because right now they have a full-time math interventionist and a part-time reading specialist. So what we're looking to do is add a 0.5 reading specialist to the elementary level to looking forward here on the slide so I can speak directly to it.
I remember that from the middle school presentation and bringing it up to a
I know. It's similarly.
one full time.
That's right. Yep.
Do we think that's going to be enough? Because based on intervention pieces, you're looking at this year's sixth grade that ended, essentially ended their fifth grade school time in March of last year. So they entered middle school this year. So in my opinion, next year's middle school, you're looking at all three grades, but you're looking at the sixth and seventh grade for missing those foundations from fourth and fifth grade years.
Yes, and so in our budget conversations and meetings with Tanya, she felt very certain that with the full-time interventionists they have now, and with the increase of the literacy specialists to a 1.0, that having 1 and 1 would actually be enough to help narrow those gaps.
Okay. I knew it was thought of. Without having it in front of me, I just needed that.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that's a great
visual. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so it looks like the positions for the elementary that would be brand new money would be the 2 STEM teachers at the elementary level.
Right. But everything else in terms of teachers to cover classrooms, everything else we can cover with what we currently have. And
when Jenny and Christina presented, the committee had an opportunity to see those class sizes too.
Yeah, I'm looking at that right now.
Yeah, which was a good balance between 20, 21 up to, I think, 24, 25 was the biggest.
Mostly 20, 23.
23.
We got 25.
Not that I think there's a misunderstanding. I just want to be very clear because otherwise shame on me. When we say the funds to cover the people that we have in the classrooms, just want to make sure, aside from the additional faculty that we're referencing, it's pre-COVID numbers. It's not all.
Correct. Oh, I know it's not all the, yeah.
I didn't think anyone misunderstood. I just want to make sure that I put that out there.
So I think if we had an absence of, I'll say it that way, the STEM teachers, we would have still the inequity that we heard from both principals about the technology offerings in both schools. We also would have the inequity around the grade level planning time, that PLC time, where they're looking at student work and the student data cycles. And so they still would have an inequity in that. The other main goal was to get the reading specialist out of teaching reading as a special, because it's not, it should be a targeted intervention. So I know that was an important piece of this too.
And I just want to point out, we've been talking about the reading piece for years, trying to get them out of being a special.
Yeah. Well, and I guess I believe, and I've been having conversations, I'll put that out front with our part-time reading specialist kind of connection right now. But, if we're going to see losses, which we all believe we will and not have already, that's one of the key, that's like the key. And you can't address that with simple intervention. I mean, you've really got to have a set program with they just can't read to kids, I guess is what I'm trying to say. They can't just have a group of the 23 because they're taking somebody's prep time and taking the class and just read to them. It's really got to be planned, targeted, every student counts kind of thing. And can't do that without the people.
Yeah, you are 100% correct. And just to that point, Jane, we had to increase her hours already. She just started because she cannot make the traction she needs to with the time she has. It's just the gaps are too big. And that's present. That's right now. That isn't next year with everybody back. Exactly your point. So we were able to fix that issue with the complex, but we have not been able to address it to the degree that we need to at Millville.
Yeah. I just, okay. Anyone else or? Okay. Where would folks like to go next?
Jason, did you say the PowerPoint sort of has the large overview?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's, yeah, oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jason.
I'm just wondering if, I mean, I think the whole intent was to look at the big picture so that, it's hard to prioritize when you just look at someone's list. So if we're just looking at Jill's list and like, what do we say? Like, I think it's like how to use the money in the best way possible. But
that's why I'm looking at if
I
people
think we need to see the big picture.
If people have that presentation, I don't know what Jason called it exactly, but it looks like page 12 and 13. I don't know. I can't.
Do you want me to pull it up, Jane? I can share the
screen. But it lists like programmatic needs and growth, return and recovery needs, from a staffing. I mean, if we're going to start at staffing, I mean, there's other places we can go, but okay. This is probably good. Better than what I had. My little tiny.
Would this be helpful, Jane, to look through?
Yeah, page 12 and 13.
Okay, let me scroll down to that.
And for those who if you want to get both pages together, you can change your own options on view options. Like Jason doesn't have to change them. We can change them too.
So that's 12 and 13 is, okay, yeah, the return and recovery positions.
I think that's mostly it, right? Is there another one I missed?
It only on slide 11 just has the money that's in our existing budget that we just left positions open.
Yeah. But we hope to fill, correct? Like
yeah, I know that we really, I mean, the PE wellness at the high school was to offer more enrichment, phys ed enrichment opportunities. I don't know that should be a priority at this time. That would be one that I would recommend to the committee that we not move forward with, frankly. That I think would help us on the other end in terms of prioritizing other needs. I don't know that we need a third phys ed teacher.
That's the only one that stood out for me as not a need. I mean, you know what I mean? I hope.
Yeah, and I don't know how the committee feels overall about that, but I know that our team didn't.
Well, I think how it.
Go ahead, Aaron.
I was just saying the high school has always had 3. This is their first year with 2. I wish I had asked that night if it was only working with 2 this year because of the block scheduling.
Or they can't do much?
Well, no, but so let's talk about that for a minute though. The teacher that did get moved was the athletic director also. So she was actually only covering, do they need that full 1.0? I believe she was only covering, I honestly, maybe 3 periods. I honestly don't know. I think she had 2. She had her prep and another prep because she was the athletic director. So is it really a true 1.0 or is it a 0.5 or is there actually a need because they made it work this year? But I didn't dive that deep into the question, I guess, when Mr. Dudek was on.
she was doing three courses. at the
3
high
out of 7.
The rest was her AD work and her prep time.
Yeah.
I think before we moved that position to the middle school, frankly, to fill the wellness teacher, the health teacher, they had worked on developing kind of an array of enrichment opportunities for kids, which I think is great, by the way. I'm not
Yes.
against that,
Yes.
but that's the
But they still have those,
The
just so you know.
Yeah.
They do have those running with the block schedule.
Yep. So I think they were looking at ways of offering kids more PE enrichments, which I think would be wonderful, by the way. If we're looking at, do we put a STEM teacher at the elementary school so kids can actually get literacy as an intervention the way they're supposed to and not use it as a prep? I think you probably know where I stand on that.
Jason, can you scroll down for a sec?
This one?
2 more pages, because we are supporting, what I don't want to do is leave a new high school, right there, a new high school principal without supports, but we are doing that with other we're doing that with the math, we're doing that with the English language. And so, to not do it with physical education, I think maybe okay for now. I don't know.
Yeah. I'd rather see the money go into the pieces on slide 13.
My hope would be whatever leader we choose for the high school, they'd be in agreement that it's more important to get these interventions in place and the whole return and recovery for the district as opposed to that additional PE portion.
And if I remember Mike's presentation correctly, the high school also have these courses or these positions would run as some enrichment courses too. So you get 2 bites of the apple.
Right, that's what I'm saying. I think that was the case. Like they would do, I think that was the case.
You get some targeted intervention and you get a couple of enrichment courses.
Right.
To get kids out of study hall.
Yeah.
I know that's been a thing.
It was, Mike presented it as it had been, where the individual was doing some business classes that were electives, and then he was doing the intervention work as well.
Actually took a team to the DECA competition in Boston, which was really awesome.
Yep.
All this madness happened. But,
That was the math interventionist who did that? That was that? Oh.
Yeah. He did a couple of DECA business courses and did a DECA program and then ran intervention blocks.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, pretty cool.
All right. Anyone else see anything that, so so we know that the bottom line numbers, or I know that the bottom line numbers are something we still need to address. So I guess what I'm asking everyone is there anything on these 3 pages that Jason just scrolled through that we prioritize as a, lower priority, or do we remove it from the list at this point in time to just try to get that bottom line number a reasonable and manageable number for the communities? So let me rephrase. Is everything on this list something we're all willing to go to the mat for? And not Matthew Matt, but Matt.
I think going to the mat has to be a calculated situation, right? I mean, there have been years where our initial number was sort of so high in the sky that we knew we never would get that, even though, I mean, again, we're always in this position where, is there anything on this list that we don't think would benefit kids? No, there's absolutely nothing on here that we don't think will benefit kids. So it's always a matter of what will we get the most impact on kids than something else, And so my question, and I think I know what the answer will be, but I'm going to ask it anyway. And it's to Dr. DeFalco. For me, my question is, like, I see interventionists and I see specialists and I see us coming off of COVID, which I think those positions to me become very, very important to me, because classroom teachers only have so many minutes in the day, and kids only have so many minutes in the day. So those folks are going to be able to, if we can get them out of this rotation of covering craziness, absolute intervention, hardcore intervention.
Right.
I agree.
I feel like, to me, Jason, where do coaches fall in on that?
Sure, that's a great question. So I think from that perspective, a couple things. The first, the way that we've parsed out the grades and we've separated those grade spans, and we've eliminated the need for an associate principal. The principals need additional support in helping to support the teachers. And I will say our classroom teachers have come a long way in their understanding of the role of the instructional coach. So much so that both our two classroom coaches, not speaking about special ed specifically, but our secondary and our elementary coach are jam-packed in terms of trying to support all of the work around assisting teachers with planning, giving them informal feedback, helping them look at student data, using that data to help them with their planning, that whole kind of cycle of improvement, running the professional learning community meetings, running staff development with teachers. They are moving nonstop. From my perspective, I think the role of the instructional coach or planning, teaching, and learning coach, we get a huge value in terms of what we spent. Essentially, it is the teacher support side of the work to help the teachers better support the kids without the administrative kind of costs. So while the principals would say, they certainly value the coach, they want the coaches, they need the coaches, they're still solo administrators, so to speak. So there's no one helping with evaluations or dealing with discipline issues or any of those other things, which both principals are fine with, providing that they have someone to help them move their teaching and learning agenda. So, and specifically with the way the schools are separated moving forward with the grade spans, I think it makes really good sense to have the planning, teaching, and learning coach specialize in early childhood and then upper elementary so that they can develop our teachers alongside of the principals. Teachers struggle with, and I give our teachers a lot of credit because they've come a long way with this too, particularly at the elementary level, with working side by side with their principals. That's our evaluator, right? And so it's hard. It's hard to sit down with your principal and have a session around lesson planning and looking at data and working through that to develop lessons for the kids in front of them. It's far easier to do that with a coach that's not evaluating you. And the idea is that that coach impacts 400 kids in one building and 400 in the other, which is actually a pretty significant reach as far as that position goes. So, I know the committee knows I feel very strongly about these positions. So that's kind of my...
And I guess I want to say, when we committed to starting it and we committed to going in that direction, we have seen the success from it. If we weren't seeing the success or we were getting a lot of pushback, we did the whole focused schools approach, and, in Carrie's presentation to us, she raved about, she's working herself out of a job because this support is there. And, I think if it weren't, I think that's a different discussion, but I think that it is. And I will tell you, and Sarah can maybe echo it as well. She and I have had the pleasure of interviewing the first round of high school principals, and the ones who we were the most excited about were so excited with the fact that our schools had coaches. I mean, one person was stunned, like you actually do. And I think it's something people easily remove, but I do think it's working, and I think it's working well. And I think I think if we want to stay focused on this work, the teaching and learning work, which is where we said we needed to go, where our district was really falling, then this is not the place we need to reduce.
And if I could just add to that, Jane, and please, I don't want the committee to take this in any way, shape, or form as a complaint, because it's not. But I will say, as the individual in charge of running the school system, managing the school system, but I'm also in charge of curriculum, teaching, learning, data, assessment, professional development. That is very rare, and it's really hard. It's not a complaint. However, as much support as we can give our principals, because they're little minis in their buildings that are driving that work, right? In terms of being those instructional leaders, it would be incredibly helpful for them to be able to have a coach to help them keep that teaching and learning agenda moving while they're managing and running their buildings.
Yeah.
Just to give a deeper sense. It's very, very hard.
Jason, can you go back a page?
Yeah.
All right. Whoop, whoop. Yeah, but go a little higher so we see everything on it. There you go. Right there. Freeze. Reactions to what's on this page.
From the custodial perspective, Matt, can we do without the half and the half, or is that something that you is a necessity? What are your thoughts on? Maybe
necessity? No. We do have concerns about the cleanliness of the buildings. We do have more kids coming into one of the buildings. Granted, that's a shift, but again, moving people from building to building and having them going back and forth during their shifts is it cuts into the actual
Work.
manpower time. And we are currently working at a bit of a deficit, which we've been able to, I want to be clear, we're at a deficit from our regularly funded positions right now, but we have those additional custodians that we're funding through COVID funds that are doing the disinfecting and trying to help maintain during the day. And given the combination of those positions and the decreased number of students in the buildings, the evening work has been more manageable. But again, total necessity, no. I do think at least a 0.5 should be added to
a roving custodian.
It would actually, what that would do is a 0.5 would make the one person that we have split right now full-time somewhere, and then I'd introduce a half-time custodian to the other building. I think it would be most appropriate. So right now we have one custodian in the evening that's split between the complex and the middle and MES. And I think given the increase in the number of students to MES, it would make sense to make that individual full-time evening at the Millville Elementary and add a 0.5 to the complex.
But next year, we'll actually have less people at Millville, won't we? Just because of the grade 2? Or will we have significantly more?
No, we will have more students because we're introducing
grade 1. Well, we have one there now.
Correct. But we have, I think, how many grade 1 classes are coming over?
One first grade there.
Only one.
Kathy Jones is the only first grade teacher at MES.
Correct, but I'm saying from the complex, we have, I believe,
there are 4 here.
4 classes moving over.
Yeah.
And only one second grade coming out.
Well,
oh, not yet. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
The 3rd, 4th, and 5th are going out too.
Yeah.
So 2, 3, 4, and 5. So 4 classes are
Yep,
going
2, 3,
out.
4, 5.
Well, no, because there's more than one of some. So 5 are going out, 5 are coming. So it's the same. It'll be about the same.
It's about the same,
Okay,
but we never adjusted for the increase of all of the kindergarten students. this year.
gotcha. Gotcha.
So,
And to be honest, the kindergarten, I'm sorry if I cut someone off, it's hard to see everyone. The kindergarten, the younger students, believe it or not, as we're starting to shift them all toward Millville, from a mess perspective, unfortunately, they do require a bit more upkeep, particularly with the carpeted rooms in Millville that we'd like to maintain.
I was going to make a comment, but I won't. Tara, were you going to say something?
I was going to say, so did we just come full circle to say that you do need the 0.5 at both as listed?
So I went not necessary 1.0, but I would definitely advocate for an additional 0.5, if anything.
Okay.
And then we were talking about the high school department heads. I just think I have a quick note just saying we would need to be discussed, the position. So I don't know what that does to the budget.
About 17,500. We'd look at 4 of them. They're about 1,750 a piece. Or no, so I didn't know.
It's 7,500.
But it doesn't necessitate adding another staff person to cover their extra class that they miss because of being a department head, right? Like we still have enough staff.
So that's what we're going to discuss with the union. That's what we need to go and talk about the conditions, because I would love to see these positions back in place, but not at the expense of sections of, I guess we need to have conversations with the union about why do we pay a stipend and then give them a period?
Oh, gotcha.
You
Yeah.
know what I mean? We do that, by the way, with the team
Middle
leaders.
school.
I don't understand that. I mean,
With the who? With who else?
team leaders also have a stipend.
Okay, that's in the middle school, right?
Yeah, but the bulk of the work they do is during the day, and I don't understand I don't know. We have to have a conversation with the union about that to get a deeper sense of
Okay.
their job responsibilities. We'd like to bring them back for sure, but I don't want to do that at the expense of sections for kids,
Right. Same.
Is that in the contract that they get both?
Yes. So that we'll need the committee's approval to go into a MOA conversation on this particular issue if we fundamentally get to that. Both are in there. They get the period and the stipend, Sarah.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Anything else position-wise that anybody wants to throw on the table?
Can you just remind us what the nurse was? RP?
Jill?
It's an individual, it's required for a student.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
So is that like circuit breaker reimbursing kind of thing or no?
That
You
is
have to
something that I would try to apply circuit breaker funds to.
Yeah. They have to meet a certain threshold for that, but we look very carefully and try to submit, if they
Right.
do.
Wait, so, and again, I hope I'm asking this in the right way. Someone who needs that health type of support, it's not covered under health insurance, like it's not a health insurance thing while they're in school.
While they're in school, no, it's not.
Wow.
No, because they need that service in order to access school, which in turn, they'll be able to access the curriculum.
So to your point though, Jane, that is where we get our Medicaid reimbursements from though as well. So
Okay.
it's
Okay.
certainly not a fully funded situation.
Right.
But as the service providers record their services and they're putting in notes into the system, and there's a whole process that's how we accumulate the Medicaid reimbursements.
Gotcha. All right. That a little bit.
But again, that does not even our entire Medicaid reimbursement, I wouldn't see that offsetting the total cost of, maybe just offsetting the one-to-one nurse.
Mhm, mhm.
And that would have been all of the Medicaid claims for all of our various services, like the OTP, So it's definitely not a full, similar to the preschool, it's something toward it, but it doesn't offset entirely.
Gotcha. Anyone else? Yikers. Oh, we didn't.
I just want to reinforce some support for that, because the custodial positions, those are positions, in my opinion, that would be called restoring. Since we're essentially, we'd be going back to what we had 3 years ago or 4 years ago, but we cut it 3 years ago. And I think it was duly pointed out by the elementary principals that it's just even the upkeep of the buildings. And we only had the outside company here giving us their recommendations a few weeks ago. And I think they pointed out how well kept some of our facilities are. And I would hate to let that fall any further behind.
So Aaron, you would advocate for keeping the 2.5s or as Matt said,
Yes.
the 2?
No, I would. I because I know that's, where we used to be. That's basically where my support comes from. I know that's what we used to work with. Though I don't have the slides in front of me on what the actual enrollment will be in each building. I know when you were talking about moving the grades, but where does it leave each building capacity wise with the new regional agreement?
It's
Give me
in,
1 minute, I can pull up the numbers.
yeah, it's in.
Just bear with me a second here.
Actually, Jason, I think it's in this it's in your slide deck
is.
earlier, I think, too.
Oh, is it in here?
It's in the, it's definitely in the elementary school ones, but I think there's numbers in here, if I remember correctly.
It would put us at Millville with the pre-K just about 300 students. And at the complex, give me 1 second, I can tell you right now. It's going to be about 450, but let me just give you a better number here.
I guess it wasn't in here.
Yeah, 461.
Mm-hmm. So that's definitely an increase to the Millville building. We've always hovered right under 250.
Yep, that's right, Aaron.
So I just want to make sure the committee knows or remembers that we did make that change. That really just brings us back to where we used to be staffing wise on custodians. But as Jane put it earlier, what are you willing to go to the mat for? That would be my evidence of that, but I understand why we're at the point of talking about the need versus the wants.
Yeah. How do other folks feel? I know that needs-based.
So with all of those in, if we can scroll through and look at this on the PowerPoint so you can see, just kind of bear with me as I'm sliding forward here quickly. Matt, all of these are in the zero-based budgets, right? Or in the needs-based?
Needs-based,
Needs-based, all right. Let me go to that, hang on.
because these are new, so they wouldn't be in the zero. Well, some of them.
Here's needs-based, okay. So Matt, this slide 19 has all of these positions in it, everything, right?
Can you scroll down to the
5.23, 4.84, Matt.
Yep.
This is the one with all of them in it.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Got it.
But that's with us drawing from E and D. Is that right?
Yep.
That is drawing from E&D and as well as using circuit breaker and COVID funding.
So where, and I know you said this before, but I forgot, where would that leave us with E and D? Or
We are
Well,
currently
no.
getting E&D certified right now.
Yeah.
The thought is that our E&D levels will remain relatively like hovering around 500 to 600. So that would probably put us, could put us back in toward the mid to upper 300,000. I can't tell you that with 100% certainty as it hasn't been.
But we essentially, so we had agreed that we would use some last year kind of COVID, team teachers or support teachers, whatever we're calling them. And we said we could even go further, and we didn't end up having to go there, correct?
Correct.
So this is kind of using that commitment that we already essentially made to use those funds, to use them for next year.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think would be, even though there's the extraordinary relief, the extra money coming, I think it would be validated just for
Recovery.
the recovery.
yeah,
So Matt, is this on the screen right now, percentage increase 4.52%?
What? Wait a
Is
minute.
that, or am I at the wrong spot? Oh, there it is. Down, I'm sorry.
5.23,
Over 20.
4.84.
5.23 is
Blackstone.
Blackstone. What is the increase to our budget? Am I reading this right? 4.52?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. And where were we this year?
Oh, God.
What was our percentage increase this year for 2021, FY21?
Give me 1 minute.
I know Millville's increase was about 1.5 and Blackstone it was just a 3.
Our recertified increase was at about 2%.
Yeah, it was just under, I think.
One-
Wasn't it 1.9 something, Matt, or something? It was just under.
It's 1.8 for the total, and it was for Blackstone this year. It was 3.49, and Millville was extremely low. It was 1.36. Again, I do want to be clear though that these and it shifted last year significantly once we actually got the minimum local contribution numbers
The state, right?
from the state, because they could very well be requiring the towns to be contributing more. I do anticipate MLC to be going up this year. These estimates are set at MLC staying constant. So I just put MLC at what it was for this year.
So I will, and I expect that is true, Matt. I expect that the minimum will in fact increase, which makes it hard to get the additional, but maybe that balance will balance off. But we changed the focus of doing these workshops. So we would come before the joint meeting. So we wouldn't go to the joint meeting with, 5, 6, 7% increases and say, oh, well, we'll look at it. So I think that was Tara's point or Tammy's point or Aaron's, somebody's earlier today. We just saying we can do without a part-time additional PE teacher is not going to move this percentage, maybe 0.1%. So I guess I'm saying to everybody, it's time for the hard look. And I realize we haven't looked at everything. We've only looked at staffing, but taking away, staffing is the big dollars, and taking away one is not going to move this needle. And I, for one, don't believe that we can go to these communities at 5 and, 1/4 and almost 5% each, essentially.
But I honestly, just to be the devil's advocate on that, Jane,
Yeah, that's good.
I think they need to see where we stand coming into a recovery year. I think in all fairness, they need to see what we really need. Now, I hate that it's 5.23%, but how do we get them to feel the severity of our needs when we are giving it to them with adjustments already built in?
Well, because it's us doing our due diligence. We have a fiduciary responsibility to do our due diligence. And while, I think any one of us can argue for every single one of these things, it's not responsible. It's not. And so we have that response. I mean, that's our job. That's not the town's job to say, well, we'll take 50 here or 50 there or 25 here, or we'll only give you, 4%. That's our job to prioritize these things and say, I mean, we can show them this budget. We can show them where we started. We can show them what the need really is. But I think it's up to us in terms of priority to say, here are the things that push comes to shove when the budgets really start to come through that we absolutely cannot do without. And I know, Aaron, you probably remember, way back when, before Alan, and we had that kind of list where the line was, here's the line. If we can go over it, here's the line. If we go under it, here are the things. And things were absolutely in a priority order. Yes, we would love to have it, but not at the expense of B or not at the expense of A. So I think you can show a town this, but I think we have a responsibility to say, this is not fiscally reasonable. And so in looking at reason, here are some things we'd lower on that priority list.
So the total additional is that 2.4 million. So how much should we star or note somewhere of that? Are we going to have to look at where it could be cut? Because that's the number we need to cut from, right? That 2.4 million?
Essentially, yeah, right?
So do we want to do it like we've done in the past and say, well, we're comfortable with a 3% or where do we want to be?
Right, if we bring that down to like 1.5, what is that?
We
Put the
need to know,
percents at,
yeah.
or that kind of math?
Right.
Well, that's you and Jack. You and Jack are usually our do it in your head people.
But I mean, I disagree with that approach to making a budget. You're supposed to.
I think it's more just, sorry, for me, like, it's just to be prepared.
Yeah.
It's not to make the budget. It's just, we know that we're going to get the pushback. So
yeah,
that's the number we need to cut
if you're asking what, like, I'm unwilling to budge on individually.
That's what I'm asking.
Interventionists, I'm not willing to sacrifice coaches because we're going to need them. Interventionists aren't going to fill the gaps for everyone. Every teacher is going to see a new type of classroom next year. Like even if everything went back to normal, which we don't know if it will, like the gaps are going to be there.
Mhm.
And they're going to need tools, and the coaches help them find the tools that they need to reach the students. So I'm not budging on the coaches. The PE teacher, I said, I don't think that's a need. I don't know about the custodians, to be honest with you. Like, to be honest, that's where we always cut, right? We always kind of drop that one off the list. But I mean, what I just don't agree with, like, well, they're not going to like this number, so let's figure out which number they like, and we're going to cut whatever we need to get there. I would want to look at the athletics and music budgets rather than look at an interventionist or a coach. Teaching and
So what else is there besides staffing? Because you said that, Jane, you're like, well, we're only talking staffing right now. Where?
So for me, there's
Where's the
some
other
computer.
bucket?
So for me, there's some computer programs. I mean, I know teachers love Nearpod or whatever it's called, Nearpod, but Edpuzzle does the exact same thing for free. I mean, you can take a video and you can embed questions, and you can have students respond. Students can create their own. There are other things. I mean, yes, it's ideal, and yes, it's a very polished professional thing that if you really know what you're doing and you really know how to use it, then it does a service. But I will put money on the fact that probably not all of our staff, or the good portion, for $16,000 or whatever it was, $6,000. Not in front of me now, but that some people will be like, "Ooh, this is a cool tool," and then not use it. They've had 8 months now to practice with online resources, and some people have truly mastered some things. It's unbelievable. But some people will go back to the good old in front of the classroom, and not necessarily need all the bells and whistles that we have had to use this past year. And so growing those bells and whistles, maybe this is a year we can't do it. So that's where some other funds to me are. We haven't gotten there yet, but they're like bucket.
it's
Yeah,
actually,
I would have some of those too.
yeah, no, I would.
I think it's fair to say that everyone knows I would totally take those Envision workbooks. Not because I want the kids. I wouldn't. I don't even feel like I would be taking them away from the kids. And I did ask about them, and they said they're being used, but I would still look at that. But those numbers, we need a lot of those to me.
Well, that's what I'm saying. They're bucket.
Right.
They're
buckets.
So to a couple of points that were brought up earlier, and I certainly don't want to interrupt in your guys' discussion. I do think that above minimum that you're looking at right now, that 2.4, believe it or not, it doesn't have to come down to a 1 point something in order to make a significant percentage decrease for the towns, because a big portion of it is in the MLC and the transportation. So even reducing that by a couple of 100,000, I think if that came down to like just under 2.2 million, that would probably put Millville at about 3%. I'd have to again, I'm just looking at the numbers right now. I have to double check everything, but.
And Sarah, to the point you made earlier, and so I'm always very cautious about when I say it, because part of me is like, hey, if we go with 10%, that's what we need, 10%. But I know that the towns are doing some recovery kinds of issues as well. I know that in both communities, not just, this is not a, Millville's broke and they can't afford it. This is both communities. Mm-hmm. There's some recovery issues that they'll be addressing. There's some safety issues that they'll be addressing. And so I I just think, I don't think that I'm saying we have to get to, 2.5 or we have to get to 3 or we have to get to 4. I think what I'm trying to say is we have to get to the point where we have combed through this with that fine tooth comb to say, here is where we cannot live, I have said, and Sarah has said, and Jason has said, we cannot live without these coaches. We cannot, I'll go to the mat on that. But there's probably things in here that, yes, they're important, but are they important this year? Are they important? It's kind of like the social worker. I think it's extremely important. I think it would have been a godsend to have that person this year, given, everything that's going on. It would have been huge, but we didn't, and we survived, and, we're moving forward. And so, there has to be, or there likely is, or are some things in here that we can be a little more fiscally in tune to. And maybe it's not removing some of the new things. Maybe it's removing some of the things that we've funded for years that maybe just, aren't as high a priority anymore. I don't know. That's not in a staffing issue, but it might be in some of the others.
I think when I think about the return and recovery work and the acceleration of the district blueprint, and I think about when I look at the 3 slides, slide 11, 12, and 13, those are the staffing slides. I look at the unfilled or reconfigured positions on slide 11. And, I think with everything we're trying to do, I think, we have to, my recommendation would be to fund the planning, teaching, learning coach for the pre-K to 2. I think the district social work position would be fantastic. I've been advocating that now. This is the second year. However, we've been working really hard with the SEL teams in each of the buildings and the guidance and support staff to do care coordination. So, we certainly can continue with that effort. It's not ideal. It's not what we want. But, if I had to look at those items, I would argue that the teaching and learning coach is more important. When I look at
to do a part-time social worker, or that's too hard to find?
No, I think there's that certainly is possible. I don't know what that would look like, but it's certainly something that we could talk about. I think one of the things that's really important with that, and maybe it's something we do different and we look at it as a stipended position. Our kids go away, vacations, summertime, and we don't know. We don't see them. We don't hear from them. We don't know what they're going through, the struggles. I think there could be some creative solutions to try to keep the services, continuous. So we don't start in September and it's Groundhog's Day all over again in terms of trying to, work with our most challenging kids, coordinate services again, find out what happened over the summer. Oh my God, they have all these issues. Well, of course they do. We've done nothing with them for July and August. Of course. Like, why are we surprised every September when we have the same challenges? It's ridiculous. So I think there's some coordination that we could do, Jane, that maybe might look different than a full-time position,
Yeah.
To look at that maybe. I think when I look at slide 12, some of the items on here I think could be circuit breaker related, but I think that, we consistently stated to our communities that in that realignment, we were pushing for equity among services and opportunities for kids.
Yep.
And I see those 2 STEM teachers as a real important piece of the work. Could we do it with 1? I'm not sure. I don't know. We'd have to look at all the scheduling and see, but I would strongly advocate for those positions, at minimum 1, if not both. And then frankly, slide 13 is the return and recovery kind of COVID money. So hopefully this wouldn't impact the local budget anyhow, frankly. But we have to think about a 2-year plan for that. Because in this plan, it's, $496, that only covers 1 year.
Right.
We don't have that, we've got to be really thoughtful about that, because I do think it's going to take us a couple of years to fund both, to keep these positions in play to close those gaps.
Anyone else?
Okay. You feel better. You should go, but I want you to be very careful.
I don't think that was for us. All right, do we want to move on to by school? Or, look at the elementary and then the middle and then the high school and then the kind of the order we saw them? What do people think about that? Hello?
Sounds good.
Okay. I just had the elementary. Where did it go? Jason, is that something you and or Matt can
Would you like me to pull up the high school?
start with the elementary?
Sure. Yeah. Give me 1 minute. I'll pull them up here and share my screen.
I have them too if, oh, that one's Jill's. All right.
Jason didn't like the way that I scrolled last time, so I'm not allowed to present anything.
No, listen, if you wanted to go for it, Matt. No,
I'm just kidding.
I do not have to be in charge of this. Trust me. I'm good with.
Well, that's why I'm like, we have to call all these things something different because I just had it. I literally just had it. And now.
I have all of the presentations. I mean, I definitely can share it. Just give me 1 second.
I have it right here.
Okay. I have them all in one place. I just need to get there.
Thank you.
No, I just have too many tabs open.
You got it, Jason? Because I have them all.
Yeah, and I have it. No, I have it up. I just have to share my screen.
Okay. Sorry, I'm not looking at yours now. I'm looking through my docs.
It's right here.
Gotcha.
All right. Let me scroll from music to. All right, elementary. Here we go.
Okay.
I thought you were going to start with the tuba.
We're all going to learn the tuba. 10 tubas. Here we go. All right. So they had their library materials,
Instructional.
durables, magazine file, Motorola's.
I feel like I'm in the glue stick.
Yeah,
discussion.
we're in the glue stick. You want.
Those are the Envision workbooks.
There's the workbooks.
They're there. When we purchased the curriculum last year for ELA, was that purchase covering the books, or is there a line for more supplies for next year?
Nope, not for the ELA materials. That was taken care of.
How about science?
No, the science is set to. I think it's already, meaning it's already in the budget.
Slow, go a little bit down. Yeah, stop right there. All right. So there's Envisions again. Is it in there twice?
For each school. Each school needs their workbooks, the kits.
So it's 11,000. So it's $22,000 in workbooks.
not just the workbooks, it's the whole platform. It's all the online licenses. It's, that's the whole.
All right.
I think it's fair to point out that we would be looking at a higher number if we had gone through with we could possibly be looking at a higher number if we were starting a new program, or, instead we did the 2-year curriculum review
Yeah.
versus the 1 year.
Right.
Right.
This time next year, Erin, exactly your
It's going to
point,
be large.
it's going to be huge. So respect.
No new people, no.
Yeah, it'll be a big number.
Can you scroll down then? Go ahead, because that's now that I'm understanding it. Yeah. That's it.
I just wish they used the workbooks that we buy.
Because this is all teaching.
Yeah, that was it. The rest of it was staff.
Okay.
The principals really did, as you've seen,
Yeah, and there's not
there's not a lot there. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. You want to go up to music?
Sure. Todd didn't add anything. Just FYI.
There was some on the high school budget though, it was under Mr. Dudek.
Don't forget the tuba.
Yeah.
Yes, it was for the music program, not the extracurricular, the in-school music program, rather, not the extracurricular ensembles and things.
And fairly, that tuba was supposed to be purchased.
I know. I know. Sorry.
Is there anything else on that line?
I don't know. Is there anything in the other direction above that?
No.
No. Yeah, nothing. Nothing.
Yeah, this is all just existing.
Do we have any numbers attached to the athletics? He kind of, I know he said he had watched us the night before to put his budget together, but is there an increase on the athletic budget percentage-wise?
Do you mean for the stipends or anything, Erin, or just the materials?
He didn't have numbers attached, I believe, right? On his presentation?
He did, yeah, he did revise the uniform cycles. And those numbers were, I can't tell you offhand any percentage, but the uniform cycles were somewhere between $6,000 and $8,000 per year on average.
When was the last time we increased user fees?
Not since I've been here.
And when we did, we went from $75 to $200. That's how long it had been
Previously.
Like we never even had an in-between. We went from $75 per activity to $200. So there had been such a big gap in doing it that the increase was that large.
I would suggest that we not replace uniforms next year. Yeah. Rather than look at raising user fees.
I think, Sarah, though, I think parents would actually pay for uniforms with the state of some of them. I think they would rather pay for the uniform.
But I would not support raising user fees.
Yeah, no, I know where you're coming from. I
almost wonder if we could implement like a uniform fee, though, where they know we would really have to be on top of that, though, because sometimes uniforms, like boys soccer this year, we're supposed to, they don't see their new uniforms in the budget year because they were ordered after the season. So charging parents for uniforms wouldn't really work if we did it that way.
I guess the way I look at it is, do we need new uniforms?
Yes.
More than we need that custodian position. And I know they're not equivalent, but
Yeah,
I mean, we're talking about cutting, right? Cutting things that we don't need.
needed in a different way.
Yeah. I mean, just like the Chromebooks, I think you have to have a rotational cycle with uniform. I do, unless you have the students, pay for their uniform, which some schools do. But again, that's an increase of use. I mean, that's putting it again back on the backs of the families. I don't, do we look at, oh God, I'm going to be
It's not even enough of a savings though to kind of like you said about the other. If it's $6,000 to $8,000, that's just another drop in a bucket.
Yeah. But I guess I'm wondering, do we look at limiting music opportunities and limiting sports opportunities? So, so that we don't try to have every chorus guard ensemble under the sun, or we only have it, certain times of the year instead of the whole year. Again, I'm going to be court-martialed, but I guess I'm just throwing out there that, are there things that don't have a lot of students in them, or I don't know, maybe there isn't.
So let me ask a question. If we're looking at, as Matt mentioned, a couple $100,000. I don't mean to say that so loosely or
Right.
easily, but if we're looking at something like that, because now we're in the, we're in the point of the conversation where we're talking about possibly not having certain existing programs. And I know that is painstaking for everybody, or raising, user fees and that on families. I guess I come back to these, positions. Is there something else we could be doing different with these so that we're not, I don't want to, let me say this. I think the committee feels the same way. Our kids have lost so much the past year.
I agree.
It's super tough to swallow, kind of kickstarting a new year, finally, hopefully with normalcy, and then not being able to do, or kids not being able to do because their parents are still out of work and we increased fees or whatever. I get all of that.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, do we look at something different? Do we look at, what does it look like? I'm sorry, Jane, go ahead.
No, so what is the total if it's no, additional PE person at the high school?
Yep.
If it's only a half-time custodian and it's a half-time social worker and or stipends to folks to kind of do that social work. I don't know who would do it or pick it up, but like what is that savings?
So I think that's a great question, Jane. And to that exact point, I feel like there's a couple of things we're trying to accomplish here. The first is to prioritize the positions that we want to maintain and those which we could potentially shave off. One of the factors, though, that we're up against this year, and we've said it, but we're really not acknowledging it right now, and it's just the unfortunate truth going into the fact that the joint town meeting is tomorrow.
Right.
We're at a different place in time this year than we were last year or years before, because the budget numbers for the state come out tomorrow. And I won't have, we'll be getting some insurance numbers back within the first couple of weeks of February, which could have some, significant impact. if I could get a 0.5% decrease or get it down, 2%, that right there could potentially take off $100 and some odd $1,000. So to your point, Jane, I feel like at this juncture, the best that we might be able to do is identify the positions that we'd be willing to sacrifice in the event that we need to, and those that we really just can't budge on. The number point is great, and I can calculate those, which I'm happy to do either now or for tomorrow. But even those numbers are still they're so hypothetical, so to speak, that I'm not sure that's like, I don't want people to go through all of these exercises, to Jason's point. Like, I don't want people to start saying what we could remove from athletics and music and then find out on February 8th that I'm going to see a $230,000 savings on insurance compared to what is budgeted for. And then none of those conversations were necessary. And again, I'm not trying to pull out surprises or, overinflate numbers in the beginning, but it is the actuality that we deal with right now. I don't know what the insurance rate is going to be. I plugged in a 3% increase. Maya has informed us the most up-to-date information that we literally got yesterday evening or this morning was the Maya range is going to be from a negative 0.26 to a 2.9%. So my budgeting was pretty right on at the top end.
Right.
But if we fall into that, our claims are good, and we decide we're going to bundle an additional vision package, we might be able to save a few points, meaning like decimal points of a percentage, and that could be $50,000 to $100,000.
Yeah, and I'm wondering too, so Matt, to your point, maybe what we do is we look at, putting some of these positions kind of on pause to get the percentages down a little bit, knowing that we may not necessarily have to in the long run based on the insurance numbers and some of the other pieces, but to get the numbers to a more manageable place for tomorrow, we might look at one of the STEM teachers, not both, but maybe one, the PE teacher, a 0.5 custodian, the social worker, because maybe we can, have a stipend at a different structure that we could save the bulk of that position. That right there is 175,000. So that, again, not necessarily saying for the long run we want to do that, but until we have more accurate numbers in terms of revenue and insurance costs, that might, if we keep looking through some of those items, that might help get those percentages down.
Yep. And I can pull up some documents even while we're talking and do some hypotheticals. Like if we say, let's decrease by this amount and this amount, what are the percentages at? I'm going into a document now. So, but yeah, that makes perfect sense, Jason. Yeah. And that's kind of like you're saying, that's where I don't want to lead the committee down a path that nobody wants to go down really. And it's so painstaking, as you mentioned, and ends up not being necessary. So I think that the high priority pieces right now are a good focal point.
Yeah.
But I would in turn say, what is the harm in showing them where we're starting? Tomorrow isn't a drop dead number. We need to give it to them by tomorrow. I think it's good that we know what we would look at after their shock of seeing the number, but why do we have to, I would hate to take away the STEM position personally. So why are we doing it just to make the sticker shock? We know we're going to go down from there. We're not going to go up. So tomorrow night's conversation, do we even have to give them these We're not giving them actual.
We can certainly, start with this need and say, this is our need. And we know as budget numbers come in, this may fluctuate, but I guess what I'm saying is, do we do some hard work now? And it's hard work. I get that. And there's been a lot of people quiet, so maybe I should be quiet for a minute and let other people speak. But do we do some hard work now? And maybe it's, small little shift of adjustments to say, we have really, we dove into this and we're really, this is really where we need to be. We're hoping some other things and numbers come in as adjustments to, bring this down for the towns, but this is where we want to fight our battles. This is where we are. And we then can justify all those things. But if there's things that we can't, we should take them off now, because we know, and those who have been on the committee for a while know that going to the town with a 5% increase is a conversation of there they go again. And not having taken anything. So what the appearance matters. I'm sorry, but appearance matters. What the appearance is okay, the leadership team asked for this, the administration asked for this, and the school committee said, yeah, that looks great. And I'm not saying that Matt and the leaders and Jason and everybody else and Jill, hasn't done their scratching their pennies and really looking at it. I truly believe they have. I truly believe they came forth with, here's what we believe is a bottom line of what we need. But as we talk it through, as those of us responsible for the budgeting of the district talk it through, we have to agree to those same kind of things. And if we agree and we say, this is what we need, we're willing to, go to the mat for 27 million, whatever it is. I don't remember what the bottom line is, but this million, and we're going to hope that, some things bring it down, but we can justify every single one of these things. And that's what we should do. That's absolutely what we should do. But if it's not, if there are things in here that, maybe we look to do a little bit differently, or maybe we look, then that's our job. That's our job. We have to do it. And maybe we can do it later, but when we put something out there to the communities, that's what they remember. And you all know that that's true. That's what they see. That's what they remember. And that's what they go off and start the conversation with.
I just put some numbers into the chat.
I saw that. I didn't see it. I mean, that's significant.
Mhm.
I can't see them, Matt. Can you share them with me?
That's 3.8. If a reduction of 200,000 will result in a 3.84% increase for Blackstone and 2.81 for Millville.
Thank you.
But again, and to our point earlier, to Erin's point also, I'm not opposed to showing them everything, because it really is what we're looking at. And to Jason's point, this needs, and we're talking about shaving the 200 off, which is good, but that is still applying all of the COVID funds to next year's plan.
Which we can't do, obviously. I think the other thing you have to keep in mind, and I'm certainly not trying to add pressure to anybody's pressure people are already feeling, we've got 110 kids we have to get back. Mm-hmm. So as we start thinking about, I don't want us to lose sight of that. Our enrollment's down, and we need to make sure that we've set the conditions that people want to return. Mm-hmm. So I think, as much as we have to continue to be creative about the numbers, and we need to be thoughtful about that.
And I think being thoughtful about that is showing them what we really need. Tomorrow is just the opening conversation. We're not asking for this. We're just showing them what we're working with. We're being transparent.
You can sell it that way.
We're always transparent.
Now. I mean, I feel.
Oh, but I understand your point. I'm not making light of your point, Aaron, so you know. I can't see you, but you're right. I mean, it is. And to Jason's point, I applied these numbers, you know, we can't put all of the COVID funding in. So these numbers are going to go both up and down. And then, you know, insurance may offset the cutting the COVID spending to roll that into a second year. And then, you know, so maybe we do still have to identify a couple of $100,000, $1,000 worth of positions or equipment or whatever it is.
But, you know, we have looked at, staffing. We had a few little suggestions or whatever there. We have looked at the elementary school and the music. We haven't looked at the middle school or the high. I mean, essentially is what people are feeling or saying is that what was presented to us is what we should present to the towns. Is that, I mean, that's Aaron's belief. Is that other people's belief?
Well, I'm not saying the town floor. I'm saying to the people we're meeting with tomorrow. Where if we present them something lower tomorrow, the chances of us having to go even lower, and we can't even get to a $200,000 difference right now. So we know we're going to have these conversations, and I think this is a good start. But just because we have a meeting tomorrow, I don't think it means we have to do it all tonight.
I agree. But I think there's a difference between doing it all and doing nothing.
There were a couple of things on the high school. I think it was like the music thing, the music app or program.
That was a couple of hundred. That was a couple of $100, but
for real.
Yeah. But to your point, I mean, I do think that you guys have identified some of the priority pieces. So the 0.5 custodial, I think that's something identified. The reduction in the counseling position, the adjustment counseling position as a possibility. I think that's identified. There are a couple of other positions, I think, that get really, when we start talking about the STEM positions and any of the intervention positions.
I don't think you heard any of us say anything about STEM except for you and Jason. I don't think you heard any of that from any of us, nor the adjustment counselor. Maybe
I heard Aaron say, I don't want to. So
social worker.
Because Jason mentioned taking it out.
Yeah.
But to that point, I'm saying, I think you're prioritizing those things that could potentially get reduced and those things where you will go to the mat for, not me.
Right. It's a good starting point.
I do think there has been motion made, for a starting point. So it's not as if we would go in tomorrow and say, here are the numbers, this is it. No, these are the initial numbers. We have identified some areas and we can discuss them certainly as well.
Matt, when will you have more information from Maya?
I think it'll be a stretch to have it the first week of February. What they've said to me, and this is important, I reached out to Ken and asked him to get some quotes from other places. Ken has fallen off on the responsiveness a little bit. I certainly.
Which Ken?
Not Ken Lombardi, Ken Bettenhauser, who assisted last time.
Yeah.
Maya has now said, since I reached out to Ken and they're going to be requesting information, they shouldn't release their renewal rates to us until all bids are in. Though I don't know if we're going to get other bids. So I'm trying to now discuss with them. Ken hasn't been super responsive and I haven't put out an official, request for bids from other independent, companies. So if Ken hasn't responded, really, I'm just waiting for Maya's renewal numbers at least to start. So I think that made them say they could maybe get them for me in the beginning of February.
Carrie, Jack, thoughts?
I mean, it feels like we're waiting on a lot of information that we don't have. And as much as I want to bring the percentage increase down, because I get it, it really drives them nuts to see high percentages. And I don't like to present anyone with a number that might surprise them. But where we are now, we can't accurately predict what our funding is going to be.
Yeah.
So how can we remove things or add things when we have no idea how much money we're going to have realistically? The state budget's not out. That's one of the basic things, you know? We got to know what the state's going to give us before we know what half of our budget looks like. So I feel like trying to take stuff off is working in the dark, and that a lot of the work we would end up doing would either become unnecessary or over necessary. We might argue about a position that once we get a budget, it's clear there was no argument to take place because either it's well funded or there's an impossibility to fund it. So I don't know that it's worth it to spend all the time now, especially when things feel so preliminary. I think just being very as upfront as we can and saying things are very preliminary is the best course of action to take.
Okay. Carrie?
I feel like we're stuck between such a rock and a hard place, because I can see some of the members that we'll meet with tomorrow night looking at it and going, 5, almost 6% increase, they're out of their mind. But at the same time, I mean, it's a recovery year. Since I joined the committee, it's been all along, it's recovery. It's recovery. The kids need that. And I struggle sitting here looking through, and I feel like we're going to nickel and dime every little thing to add up, $200 here, $200 there. And then I even think about the middle school and high school. We haven't really looked at their budget, but
Right.
To contemplate band programs, sports programs, we have so many kids that look to leave the district that to cut programs that could potentially keep some here, I feel like then we're sending more money out.
Yeah.
I do
Yeah, we
agree
can't
with
lose
that.
sight of that either.
And then making that statement preliminarily, if that budget or whatever they're looking at there, gets passed around and they see a lack of X program or Y program that we don't know we have to cut at the end and it might come back, that's just going to look bad too. Where it's like, yeah, we pulled this out of the budget here. It came back because we got more money than we expected from X or Y, but it was out when they saw it, and that was what they thought over the summer, and they've moved along because of it. As unlikely or likely as that situation could be, we really don't know what we're working with.
Okay. So I'm hearing a semi-consensus of here's where we are. And until we get some really flesh numbers to come in, we don't know where it will flesh out, but here's what we believe we need to move the district forward. And nobody wants to look at anything else.
I'm starting to know what weathermen feel like.
If I can just put this piece in, and I say this with the utmost love and respect for our committee, because I love you all dearly. I hope you're this vocal tomorrow evening when Matt and I are presenting this budget to both towns, because they are going to be absolutely livid. So as long as folks are ready to take that on, because they too are in a recovery mode, they're going to say, you guys are nuts. And I can envision some of them saying, this is disrespectful. So as long as you all are ready to kind of back us up with that, and well, I'll march into anything. I just want to make sure that, we've got the folks there with us. Because I can envision this being a very difficult conversation.
I think we've presented them a 7% once, Jason.
Not under these conditions.
No, not with you. I'm just telling you.
Yeah.
I think we've been at 7% before.
Well, I think we were at 9 one time.
Oh, maybe.
My
I'm
my
ready
only
for something.
concern is it's just the conditions that we're in. If
It's,
this
yeah, it's just, there's not a, we don't,
wouldn't phase me at
we
all.
live in community, like, I'm not even sure our communities are even though they can raise their tax dollars in the environment we're in, I'm not sure they're collecting them. Like, I think people can't pay right now. Never mind, they can't pay user fees, they can't pay their taxes, they can't pay their expenses. And, to think that the school can request an additional, $2 million or whatever, where's it coming from? Where's it
We have to give,
not
we
coming
have
from the
to,
state?
why do we feel like we have to put numbers out tomorrow? Why can't we show them this list without the numbers attached to it? And say, this is what we're looking at, but we don't have our minimum contribution yet. We don't have state money yet. Why are we putting out
Well, they're going to
the
ask.
prediction? I feel like it's still really early. Am I
It
wrong?
is earlier. It is a little earlier.
We're opening the door just to have the conversation, but do we have to have numbers for tomorrow night?
Well, we have been asked by at least Millville we've got a budget form from the town administrator that we're supposed to be submitting our budget, and it has a deadline, and it's pretty much early February. So, they have they're trying to move their processes forward too. And we have tried to work within this timeline now. I mean, this is kind of the same. We are early, but we aren't, the state has fallen behind, but we still have our timeline that we have to meet according to our regional agreement, according to our, commitments to our communities. So.
To the
So does
committee's
anybody
credit,
actually think that we need that PE position?
I don't.
No.
I was only
Then Can you
questioning
pull that out?
how many periods it was.
Can you pull it out, Matt?
yeah, but
And I agree with Jane's point about was it Nearpod? What is it?
Nearpod.
Yeah.
It's a cool little program, but it's.
Yeah, I'm sure it is, but we've been doing remote learning with, like you said, we've been functioning without it.
I just want to make sure I'm not sure I understand when you say Matt, pull it out. Do you want me to hypothetically remove that number from the total and see what happens, or
Yes.
do you want me to take it out of the budget right
Bring down our budget, Matt.
now? Huh?
Bring down the total,
Okay.
I think.
Because if we don't absolutely need it in order to move the kids forward next year, then I think it should be taken out.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
In the middle school and high school requests, adding more VMS seats, do we currently use all of the seats every year? Like, there's interest to increase those?
Yes, yeah.
I understand that we do, yeah, and
We've added a bunch this year too.
Yeah.
But we do also let parents pay for them. But, I mean, we let parents buy seats. I mean, if we're really looking, what is that number? What is the number to add those seats?
The number for those seats is
Six-
6,500.
6,000.
Everything is $6,000, $8,000, and I mean, we'd have to do a lot of that to make $100,000. I don't.
Are we trying to make $200,000 tonight? Is that what we're trying to do?
No. But I think what we're trying to do is say, or what I was suggesting, it's not what, it doesn't have consensus, so it probably doesn't matter. But what I was saying is I think that, we had departments present to us and we had them do some really hard work to do that. Like, I'm sure that, and Jill's still sitting here, I'm sure that, she went through and said, well, maybe I can live without A, but I really need B. And so what we need to do as a committee is say, yeah, we believe that Jill really needs A, and we can understand, and we can do that. Or maybe we say, well, Jill, should you maybe think of this in a few, can you phase something in, or can you, I don't know what, I mean, she talked about if you hire somebody at an hourly rate versus having the position. I mean, that was huge. Like that's huge. But are there other things in there that maybe the hourly rate is not, or a stipend is better, or, I want to feel like we weren't just committee members who were handed pieces of paper and listened to some people talk for a few minutes. I mean, we didn't ask a few questions, but hardly any questions during the presentations. We haven't even, reviewed them all, and maybe we don't want to or see a need to, but I guess I believe that we have the duty to delve deep and say, yeah, as an individual, this is what Jill needs. And as an individual, this is what the middle school needs. And as an individual, this is what the high school needs. But as a big picture, as in its entirety, I can't even say the word, but is this what the district needs, and can ask the people of our communities? We're not getting another dime from the state. We know that. We don't know what the numbers will fall out to be, but we're not getting another dime from the state. So can we ask our communities to pay in their hard-earned taxes for some of for all of the package? And somebody has to, and I know Jason does, and I know Matt does, and I know the leadership team probably does, but look at the whole entire package. If we had them all sitting in front of us today, what would they really fight for? What would they really fight for? If they had to go against, and I'm not saying we do this, but if the principal of the high school had to go against the principal of the middle school and justify, we can't do both. We can't have, a reading specialist in both places. And I'm using it as an example because I think we have to, but we can't do both. Who would we support? What do we feel? That's where I feel we haven't done our due diligence. Like, I just feel like we listened, we said, okay. And now we got to bring it to the towns.
But
And
Jane,
I don't think that's enough.
so we're only talking, we keep going in circles, and we're talking about the way this list was presented to us. We have existing materials, new materials, and the rationale for it. That's how it was presented by all of the admin.
Mhm.
We're not even talking about existing. We're going through this and we're saying, well, what on this new material rationale could we do without? Sometimes we've sat there with the full printed budget and gone line by line by line.
The water. Remember when we got rid of water? That was
Yeah, but that's why I said earlier, Erin, I said there may be something that we used to do that we don't need to do anymore. Like we
Right,
don't.
but in fairness, we don't have that list in front of us. We don't have the.
We do have we do have the existing.
I mean, when I'm sitting here scrolling through the asks, and under existing materials, I mean, the only thing the elementary schools listed was current staffing. The other schools didn't even do that. And I guess we always go to staffing because it's a bigger number. It's not 6,000, it's not 8,000. Do we want to talk about class size with the new regional agreement? I mean, do we really want to make that hit this first year that we're bringing classes together?
I don't.
I think it's going to be hard enough.
You think
I don't.
Sarah, go ahead.
No, I mean, I think it's going to be hard enough with just the recovery to then have them
I do too.
No.
I just don't see anything else on here that is like tangible to make a big difference on the bottom line.
Right.
We didn't do the 146-page budget document that we did a couple of years ago because we didn't do that. Respectfully, the committee didn't want to do that last year.
Correct.
We didn't put that huge thing and go. Remember, we were there till just about midnight, actually.
I do think it would be good for Kerry to see, even if it's in an email. Don't print it, Kerry. But I think it's important to see what it really looks like, what every line item is, and And you're right, we did not want to do that last year. But I guess then Jason, what would you recommend if it's something that's not in front of us on an ask? And we came to you and said, we need to find $100,000. Where would you go with that?
Yeah, I would look at the PE teacher, a part-time custodian. I'd turn the social worker position into a stipended type role. That wouldn't be a full position. I think that would be a place I would start. I think
And
that
then hope for
your question around 100. I think that would get us to that, huh?
and then hope for an insurance savings.
Yeah.
From where we've lined it.
Yeah, so the PE half custodian and half social worker would probably be about 100 to 110,000.
I think we pull that.
I mean, I think it's fair. If we know those are things that we're not going to stick to, then yes, pull it before tomorrow.
I just did from at least the spreadsheet. So pulling those, I pulled 50. To be very clear, I have to go back and double check the numbers. I pulled 50,000 for the PE teacher and another 60 between the social worker and the custodial, or between the three positions, quite honestly. I pulled $110,000. That put the percentages currently at 4.52 and 3.5.
So another 100,000. What would that look like?
You're saying you want me to take another 100,000?
Where would we find it?
We could reduce, possibly we could cut that PK teacher in half. We could reduce some of the special education. Though I don't know, I defer to Jill.
But I mean, there might be programs, I know 6,000 is not a lot, 8,000 is not a lot, but if you do 10 of them, there's another $60,000. There may be some things, but maybe these three are really all we can do this evening, taking that 110 and going in at 4.5 and 3.5 is what we can do. And to kind of Jack's point, get the feedback, and to Aaron's point, get the other numbers and see where we do fall. And hope that minimum local contribution doesn't go out the roof.
And really push, to Jason's point, we have to be there to push that it's a recovery.
Mm-hmm.
And our kids are going to be more than a year and a half behind.
Mm-hmm.
To a combination of Aaron and Jack's points, though, this is a personal piece. I always worry we take something out to start, and then when we say, oh, we can find a little bit more out of the insurance, then the response is, well, great, take out what you said you could to start and now remove the insurance and get it down lower. So I do just want to caution anything that we're going to take out for tomorrow. I think we better be ready to be, it's gone.
It's gone. Yeah, it's gone.
So I have the 0.5 custodian removed. I have at least half of the district social worker removed, and I have half a PK teacher removed.
No, not the
PE. Oh, I'm sorry. No, the PE teacher.
PE, yeah.
I just have the amounts plugged in.
Yeah. Okay.
That removed 110,000 is what I removed.
Anything else?
If folks want to do the line by line at some point, do you want us to prepare that 146 page document and walk through a week?
Well, I was just about to,
if you have to count glue sticks one more time.
Right.
I was just about to say that
I mean, for me, and I guess I when I went through, it seemed to me that there was more in what we have already and what we're asking for. Maybe that was in the middle and high school did a better job of, the programs we paid. Because remember, I asked the question, why are we paying X amount of money for vinyl when we had the vinyl in there last year? Are we ordering 500 more in vinyl? Remember that discussion?
Mhm.
So there are some things in there that, I know don't add up to 100,000, but they might add up to 40 or 50 or whatever. And so maybe we can all spend some individual time, really going through those and, getting real questions that, we can ask of the staff or of ourselves and seeing if there's some things in there before we get to the count 12 glue sticks and 12 rulers and 5 sets of line paper. Are people okay with that?
Yeah, and I was gonna say, it's definitely not our last look at this budget by a long shot.
No.
We know that there's a lot of work left to be done. And I always like the line by line because you see everything, nothing can hide from you there. So I wouldn't mind getting it. I don't know necessarily that we have to go through it piece by piece, but I wouldn't mind getting it.
Yeah, I mean, it would be something for all of us to look at individually, and you'll find things that you didn't know were there, but.
Okay.
Yeah.
So are we good for tomorrow?
Well, what does our spreadsheet look like?
I assume, Jason, you'll just do the budget the slides.
Yeah, Matt and I are going to meet. We wanted to finalize this piece, then he and I and Jill are going to meet. We'll thin out the PowerPoint so it's, not a 45-minute conversation about a million different things. We'll just make it a little more targeted and focused. Have the cleaned up numbers with the 3.5 and the 4.52, and we'll be ready to roll. We'll talk about all the assumptions and the work that's still left to, Jack was saying, the work that's still left to be done. It's not our last look.
Do we have the slideshow already?
Yeah, it's the one we used on the 14th.
Yep.
So what we'll do is clean that one up with the new numbers and we'll thin it out a little bit. And then we'll send that to the committee tomorrow. They've asked for that in advance. I am really against that, frankly. I don't think I'm sure some people won't even come if we give it to them. I think it's important.
I think, the response to that is it's a work in progress. We just met last night. We're refining it. We're trying to bring you the best that we can bring you, given what we know at the latest moment.
Yeah.
I think tomorrow night is in advance.
It is. Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
I think that's the reality of it is this is a date that we can't be really prepared for in a way that they're going to get a document that they're comfortable with. We're not comfortable with it. We can't be right now. We can't be. So we can't give them something they can be comfortable with if we can't be comfortable with our own numbers.
All right. Okay. We good? All right. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Moved.
Moved by Sarah.
Second.
Second by Jack. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.